come back when she's ready to come back.
Yeah, 100%. That actually ties into what we're going to be talking about, which is the identity shift, and why people keep failing isn't what they really think. And it really boils down to two words, and we talked about it on the other call, and that's the success mindset.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, that word mindset has been, how do you say it? It's just been weathered. It's to the point now where it's an overused word or overused concept. But the last time I checked in anything that we did, you do have to have a strong mindset. But what people don't talk about are the elements behind it. And that's something that I think we should talk about a little bit more, because when people go to do something new, or they're trying to make a transition, or they want to make a transformation, these are the elements that are forgotten or little to non-existent in somebody's life, because typically they're more reactive than they think. So what do I mean by that? If you've only been trained to do a job, if you've only been trained to work for somebody, if you've only been trained to do one task, if you've only been trained to do one thing, then guess what? The training got you into it, and no need to be training to get you out of it. And this is the part that I see that's missing in the marketplace, is because I didn't magically just snap my fingers and become a US Marine. I had to get trained there. I didn't just magically snap my fingers and learn how to scale businesses. I had to get some training on that. I didn't magically snap my fingers and learn how to write and do lead generation. I had to get training on that. And when people understand that that's really the missing element, that it still doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to succeed. It just means that now you're aware of what's really missing. So now what happens to those motivational videos? Well, where's the training behind that? How about those motivational quotes? Well, where's the training behind that? Is this resonating? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think keeping your mind in a right path requires training. And I don't know where the training is on that. I think, for me, when I was growing up, my dad's been in business. My parents are both business owners, right? They've been in business my whole life. And when my dad was getting into real estate, one of the people that he would listen to was Zig Ziglar. I'm sure you've heard of him. And he would talk all about mindset, like all of his coaching, and I still have the tapes, are very mindset driven. And so when you get into these careers or paths that are very sales specific, and you really listen to the people that are talking about how to become a good salesperson, most of it is about how do you change your mind about the circumstances that you're in to look for the positive and know that there's going to be a result at the end. And um I really, maybe through just osmosis of sitting and hearing my dad listen to the tapes, adopted some of those things in my life. And maybe, it disappeared for a while, but there was a period of time where I was just listening to him all the time because that's what my dad was listening to, and you don't realize, like, these are messages that are about mindset. It's about positivity. It's about looking for the good. It's about, really stop focusing on all of the things that could go wrong and focus on the things that can go right. And a lot of people don't do that. Or if you're an employee, maybe that aspect of thinking isn't required because it's already been engineered where you just have one goal, one task, right? When I was an administrative assistant, yes, I needed to be positive, but everything was really there for me to stay positive. And I just had to do my one job. And if I just did my one job, I get paid. I obviously didn't just do my one job. I took on other jobs and made my job harder than it needed to be. But that's because that's who I am, is I always look for opportunities to learn more or do more or become more efficient or help other people be more efficient. And that probably goes back to how I grew up with my parents being business owners is, You don't have just one job. It's never just one job. There's many jobs and you have to do all of them and you have to do all of them well. And then you hire people to do the things that maybe you don't have enough time for. So when we were in the hotel motel industry, my parents did most of the jobs. My dad did front desk. My mom did front desk. My mom was the maid. My mom did laundry. We had maids. We hired other people to do some of those functions. But if they weren't there, we did it. I folded towels, like, I counted money. I'm one of those workers. I was unpaid because I was a child, but I learned, you know, how to run the business. Not probably as effectively as I could have as an adult, but as a child, when I learned how to do math, my mom taught me because she had to roll out the quarters for work. So she would teach me, this is math, this is a quarter, this is, 4 quarters is a dollar. And, I learned numbers from counting pennies on the floor, where many other people probably didn't get to learn math that way or how to work inside of a business that way. I was lucky that I got that opportunity growing up. And so that that childhood experience of seeing how you need to be better or be able to do more than one task, I think that's been carried out through my entire life. And that's probably why I can do so many things. People look at me all the time like, "Well, how do you do all that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't have kids." But I think it's more than that. It's not just that I don't have children. It's that I have this skill that was just layered onto me throughout my entire upbringing that allows me to function in a way that feels really easy or smooth. Outside looking in, people like think that I do it just gracefully, and I perhaps I do, but I believe that I do work at it, right? There's definitely intentional work that goes into every aspect of who I am and how I do it. And now I'm really good at it and I can help other people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's why I'm glad that we're really talking right now because I was taking notes. You saw me over here taking notes.
He's like, "Oh, I learned something new today."
Well, the thing about it too is that taking notes really is a shortcut. And unfortunately, in the guru world and people who want to make transitions, they got to embrace the fact that notes are shortcuts because there are going to be things that you can take and actually apply, but you have to be willing to listen to understand so that you can apply them. With you in particular, because you said so much, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
What did I say? What did I say?
Well, you said a whole bunch, and that's one of the whole things is because I mean the channel is like doing the impossible. So let's look at the statistical improbability of success because when people go into business for themselves, they don't expect to fail, but yet there's a high attrition rate as far as failure goes for business. More than 90% of the businesses fail within 10 years of effort. That's a stat. Anybody can go look that up. And you had said something, and he was like, I don't know where the training is on that. You had said that earlier. You mentioned Zig Ziglar. Shout out to Zig Ziglar. I listened to him as well coming up. And you just said it. I don't know where the training is on that. That's so incredible because that's why I had to create my training until I was able to find other people who were willing to train on that. Because you got more of the practical application of a business, which is why inherently, not only are you just an entrepreneur, but you also went through the process of being an employee. You went through the process of being a solopreneur. You have a team now, which is an entrepreneurial venture, but you're also drawing from your previous experience of your parents both being industrious. And what did they do with you? They put you right in the fire. They actively had you folding towels and counting coins and helping them out with all the other tasks that an operator has to do. And that's why that word entrepreneur, when I first heard it, to me is more of a misnomer because it's like I've only understood on this planet that you have to be an operator first. Because if you don't understand it, then how can you duplicate it in your business? If you don't understand it, then how can you explain it? And some people are just doers like me. I was just doing, and doing. And then I had to learn how to slow down and actually articulate it if I wanted to grow and scale. So that's what I had to learn. But I realized that I didn't want to do this life by myself. And I am a giver. So I want to give to people. So that's why I started training and I started really showing people what I know because it does work, provided that you put in the work, you turn the wrench, you're truthful, honest, transparent, and real, and you're willing to take a risk to know that even despite all of that, you still may fail because I can't make any promises or guarantees. But what I can do is stack the odds in your favor, or at least help that way, provided that you want to do that versus asking. Because I've also had clients that I've had to fire because they'll ask so many questions to the point where I've identified you as being analysis paralysis. Now, the question is, are you a thinker or are you a doer? Because in the entrepreneurial game, you have to do both. It's not either or, it is literally both. And that's what you had just expressed. And that's why I wanted to write that down to make sure I wasn't missing anything. The other thing, you agree or do you disagree with that?
No, I agree. And it's funny because I always say I'm a hands-on learner, but what I just said explains why. Because I've always just learned by doing. That growing up, I just not that it was intentional, but it just happened that way. And so I am a hands-on learner.
So, my question is, if that's working for you, will that work for other people?
I would think so. I would think so.
Yeah. So, how
Why
is it
not?
that we have
Right?
this other thing on the planet where people don't learn by doing?
I don't know. I don't know how they learn.
Well, that's the reasons why we're talking about this, is because when you're able to speak from experience, that's what makes you an operator because you know. Like, that's one of the reasons why whenever I'm training, I know what to look for is because I've done it. And that's one of the reasons why it doesn't matter where people are in life per se. And here's what I mean by that. If somebody's already capable of doing something, then they're looking for more information so that they can become more capable. I don't talk to people who are incapable because I don't hang around people who are incapable. As crazy as that sounds, it's like when somebody's reaching, then I have enough breadcrumbs out there for them to want to check me out, right? We've got the YouTube channel, we've got free videos, we've got all of this intellectual property that's been out there, right? It's not gate kept. And then if they want to invest, it starts at $3, and that's okay. But
Mhm.
once they enter and cross that threshold, then they're able to see all the stuff that we've trained on. But
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter if you aren't capable, if you're not willing to change, and if you're not willing to understand the success mindset. So that's why I say the identity shift is not what people think it is. It's these elements that we've just unpacked with your one story. Then this is the other reasons why stories are so important, because if you have a story and if it's a real story, it means you've actually done it and you've come out on the other side, which
Mhm.
you actually in fact have. You ran the gambit of being an employee, solopreneur, solo, entrepreneur, and now having a team, and that's the game. And then from there, other things get shaped and formed. And these are the elements that we started from scratch. That's why people can start a business from scratch,
Mhm.
but they still need training.
Mhm.
That makes sense, or is that nah?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's interesting to talk about like the identity shift. And I was meeting with one of my friends this weekend, and she actually was one of my first coaches who helped me when I was looking to just even get my LLC started, right? And we had disconnected for a little while. She had gone through some medical issues, but she's doing better now. So we were connecting, and I was telling her about how we have our Monday calls, and I was telling her how much work we've been doing. And when I told her that you had suggested I go out to California, she's like, "Yeah, you should go." And I thought, "Really?" And she's like, "Why? It's what's scaring you the most. That means that you should be doing it." I'm like, "Okay." Um, and then I said, "We talk a lot about the woo woo." And she's like, "Well, it's not woo woo. It's science." And she's an electrical engineer. And so she starts talking about the signal and the electrical pathways and this and that and your, and she's also a Reiki master. And I just thought, it's more than just these words. It's energy, right? And when you're around other people, we emit energy and it's felt by those other people. And it's better when it's in person than when it's online. But online, there's a lot that can happen here too, because look at how far we've come, Fred, right? I've walked a lot of this journey here, what, 4 or 5 years now with you, far, far away. And when you say it out loud, it feels kind of weird because it's like, well, yeah, I guess. Okay, you're right. Yes, I did. When we met, I was an employee and then I did quit my job and then I was doing the solopreneur and now I do have a team. And it feels weird to say that out loud because maybe I am still assuming this new identity, but it happened. Like all of these shifts happened and we're ready for whatever that next phase of development is. And it really is showing my team or other people how they could do this too, right? And how we can really just naturally move from one state of being to the next. And it's not always um it's not always a monetary thing or a physical thing. It's like it's an energetic thing that happens first, and then everything else flows and follows from there. I think that's probably one of the hardest things for people to understand. For me, it's been a struggle because I kind of go back and forth in my mind, and I'm like, oh well, if I'm doing this now, then I should see this result immediately. And not everything happens immediately. It's not going to happen. The outside world takes time, but your inside mind, it can change immediately. Like we can immediately change how we think about something. We can immediately shift who we are. We can immediately become a leader. That doesn't mean we have all the right steps, but if we meet other people, like I met you, and you have been there and done that, now you have a path that you can share with me, and then I can follow that path and maybe, oh, you might hear my yard guy outside. But I can help craft that path for other people, right? And everybody's path is going to be a little bit unique to them, but there's certain things that are the same. And if you just follow that system, the success will be there. The success is there. It's believing that it's going to be there. That I think that mental step of belief is the hardest one.
Yeah. Well, I also want to add to what you just said and really thank you for what you're saying because this is what this channel's about. It's about doing the impossible. But my question to you is, do you think what you were doing when you were looking back at your life, was it impossible at that time? And if so, how was it impossible?
Do you mean
Just
shifting my mindset?
the growth, the
Oh, the growth.
development, the success mindset, the identity shift.
I think it depends on where I was in life, if I thought it was impossible or not. But if I were to be, I believe that I've always thought I could be successful, like deep down in my heart. But there were certain times where I felt like maybe I shouldn't even waste my time doing this because I was getting so much pushback and resistance from the outside world that it was like, why am I even wasting my energy? What's the point of this? So yeah, there could have been some times in my life where I felt that it was going to be impossible because I was getting a lot of resistance and a lot of resistance from people who I thought would be supporting me. And in those moments, the way that they were supporting me, they felt was the best way. But for me, I felt like I was being shut down and silenced and not allowed to be myself. So for a majority of like my 20s, I was a version of myself, but I wasn't being my full self. I was being what I thought was going to be acceptable to the world because when I was trying to be myself, I got shut down. So I don't know. I think I always believed that I could be successful. Growing up, I moved around a lot, and you watch inspirational people. I saw Nelson Mandela and his journey, and my mom used to love Mother Teresa, so she'd always say, "Oh, she's a saint, and she's doing good for the world, and not many people are like her." And she would bring up people that you know, characteristics of people that I should emulate. And I always believed like one person can make a difference, right? Like even Martin Luther King. I'm like, look at these one person can lead a movement. One person can change the world. It's possible. And so I've always believed that it's possible for me to be one person who can change the world, whether that is the whole world or just my world or people around me. But no, there were times where I felt like maybe I wasn't the right person to do that. I think now that I've gone through all of the things I've gone through and with what we've been working on, I do believe that maybe I'm not the one person, but definitely the community I'm building is worthy of changing the world, and we will. We are doing that. I think we're doing that together. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you definitely.
I don't know if that was the right answer or not,
No,
Fred, but that's just my honest answer.
yeah. Well, the right answer is going to be what's honest for you and what's true for you, because that's what's true for you. So for me, since we're sharing, is just that. I did when you're in it. But as I've hit like my final massive goals in life, the big one was my wife just being re-acknowledged, in Thailand. That was probably one of the largest ones ever, in addition to other stuff that you've watched me do with her. The statistical impossibility of just everything that I've done, me, is just like, why is this so hard? It's not impossible when I believe that there's a path, even if there isn't one, and I just have to be the pioneer to create it. And that's been my mantra, was I just expected that I would have to just continually blaze a path. And when I discovered other people needed that as well, just that belief system, that's where I live. I've had more people tell me, "I'll pay you anything to learn how you think that way." I'm like, "I know, but this is unique. Like this is sacred energy. It's something that through my own survival and wanting to learn how to not just survive but actually prosper, it's to me one of those things where if I'm not the only one thinking like this, how many other people are thinking like this?" But once I decided to put my energy out there to see other people, once I stopped doing all the literally impossible things, I had to come out of that environment because I'm just so used to being a creator. That's where that book came from. I'm like, I'm expecting my stuff to just always work. And it was up until it stopped. And I'm like, well, what is this? What is this thing? I've never seen this before. I'm looking up like, wow, 20 plus years later, and what I was doing just stopped working. I'm like, this is odd. But I hit another level where not only was the world shifting back in 2020, but also the sophistication level of communication was changing as well. And that's one thing that I realized was that, wow, the secret to making the impossible possible is really communication. And we've been on enough calls, whether it's us or our clients or the team, to where it's like, wow, communication's a real big thing. Why don't we talk about this stuff? Why aren't we trained on this stuff? And I was in the Marines, true, but to see how other people don't know the basics of like listening to understand and just really being there for somebody. And like I had a conversation last week, it was an hour. I'm in front of the guy and he shocked me. He's like, "I want to thank you for just listening to me." And I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, "Oh, no." He's like, "No," like his eyeballs got big. Like, this is something that people don't do. And I'm just like, okay, well, let me acknowledge the fact that he's in that energy and he hasn't had that kind of listening experience before. But I do think that that's also one of the reasons when I did my program back in 2020, I had developed this concept called the half-second step back just for that reason, because I realized when I was out in the desert that I couldn't let my monkey mind go off. I had to step back to just really take control of the situation. And you mentioned that lightly as far as people around you who you were thinking would support you, and it turned out to be something else. I realized that it wasn't just me. Like, I have to also control my environment, or at least do my best to just make sure that it's in a way where I can curate it so that I can support myself. And these are skills, and that's the cool thing about it. Skills can be learned. So I just wanted to add that part to what you had said because that was very impactful to me. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And I think you're right when it comes to communication. That's something that when I was younger, I used to think about too, right? With just wars and why are people fighting and why can't people get along? And oh, it's because they don't understand each other because of the language barrier, right? People speak different languages or they have other issues that are different, like different religious beliefs, but really it's a communication issue, right? If you really were to look at humanity, we are all very similar, even if we speak different languages, even if we have different religions. There's a lot of similarities where if we could just clearly communicate with each other, it would solve so many problems. It's more of a power problem than the differences between each other is not necessarily that we're different. It's that I feel there's a control thing where people are trying to control other people, and that's really where the issue is. It's not, but it manifests because they break down communication and make people feel unheard or misunderstood or, you know, believing things that are untrue. And I think that I don't know how you fix that problem, Fred, but that's something that I think is important is how do you clear up communication? If communication has been broken down so much, how do you clear that energy and make it where people can understand that this is what the truth is, or this is the right path, and this is a system that works. And that's something that I don't know how to do that yet.
Until now.
Until now. Now so you're gonna teach me and then I'll teach someone else.
Yeah, and I'm thankful for that because when in doubt, communicate. I wish it was any more complicated than that, but it's not. It is, but it's not. That is to me the answer. When in doubt, communicate. Because again, why we keep failing isn't what we think. You've mentioned how to be a good salesperson, real world math, intentional work. I don't know where the training is on that. Can all that be solved just by communicating?
Mhm.
So to me, it just comes all back around to that. Now, I didn't say necessarily that the answer would just magically pop out, but that's the reasons why we have two-way communication. That's the reasons
Mhm.
why, like, but we have to be in a space where we're allowing communication to really come in, and it needs to be super intentional. And when it's super intentional, just like when you see somebody running an ad, that's a super intentional communication, as an example. So
Mm.
why wouldn't I want to be super intentional to myself? Do I need to run an ad to myself? I'm an ads guy, so I gotta ask that
Maybe.
question, right? But
Yeah.
in essence, aren't we kind of doing that when we're running an ad in the first place? If we're really wanting to communicate to somebody, like we're talking about something that somebody has attention or energy on, and we're
Mhm.
addressing it. That's that marketing formula: attention, interest, desire, and action, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
again, it all starts with the identity shift because until we can understand where we are in relation to where we want to go, then we're going to have all of these 9,338 things that we have to think about. But then it goes back into the sequencing of it. That's
Mhm.
why managing your energy daily will lead to daily results. Managing your energy weekly will lead to weekly results. Managing your energy monthly leads to monthly results. being aware that you have to be aware of these things. That is, to me, the first step. What aren't you aware of? What don't you
Mhm.
know? But being real about it. Like we talk about that in our integration map, like those 10 areas. Like, where do you have the most attention right now? And is it for not only your greater good, but everybody else's greater good? Because we've seen the other side of this equation as to what happens when people don't communicate intentionally. Or if they do, it's designed for cash extraction, quite frankly.
Mhm.
So we've proven that you can have success as far as a society because we're still here, we haven't been like we're all here, you know, even despite all the conflicts, we're all here. The question then becomes like, how do we really think globally and act locally? That's what we're unpacking. And if we're able to shift our viewpoints like that and understand that we've got 10 areas of our life that are always going to be moving, whether we're aware of it or not, to me, that helps us move in a better path. It helps us determine what we can do and what we can't do, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. There is a power to know. No is still a very valid answer. So that's all I really wanted to see. And you said, how do you do all of that? Communicate. So more on that later because I know you definitely got to run, but I definitely wanted to thank you for just like recapping our current call that we just had because it was intense. So
Yeah, there was a lot that came out of that. So I'm glad that we are able to, stay in sequence here. And thank you for everything that you do and for all of the time that you pour into us, because I know that your time is valuable too.
yeah, I appreciate that. And likewise, I thank you for just being an excellent receiver because we have more of the world who needs to hear this stuff. So anybody who is listening, my challenge to them is to just really take action on this and let us know how it turns out because I'm all about hearing about people's wins. We hear about the losses, but I want to
Yeah.
hear wins.
Yeah.
So, all
Yeah.
right,
No, there's lots of wins. I'm happy for that. And I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon.
100%. So, salute, much love. And did we answer
Yeah.
that question? Why you keep failing isn't what you think? It's communication.
I think we did.
When in doubt, communicate.
When in doubt, communicate,
Yep.
and even if you're just communicating with yourself. So before we disconnect, one thing that I have been feeling that I want to do more of is reflect and use, because so much happens in a day, right? Like, I am a busy person. I used to deny it, but now I admit I'm a busy person. I do a lot of things. And what I don't take enough time to do is just kind of take a moment to rest and reflect on all of the things that are happening and just let my inner self talk to myself to see where I'm at and how far I've come. And I think that happens when we're in communication together, but I need to do more of it, more of this inner reflection. And maybe other people need to do that too. Just realize, like, we've come so far. Everybody who's still alive, you made it through another day. That's success. That's a very big success, is to be here and breathing and living and doing, right? That's success, and that's measured in the number of breaths you take. And if we just were to focus a little bit more on relaxing, it's gonna feel like it's, easier. And that's what my I'll bring that back next week. Did I reflect more? And I'll say yes.
Nice. Well, that also goes into the other parts of what we talked about. So, yeah. And appreciate you definitely. And I will see you next week.
All right. I'll see you next week. Well, I might see you sooner, but we'll see everyone else next week.
100%. Y'all take care now. We're doing the impossible with Fred Smith. Peace.
All right. Bye.